Alright, so we have something pretty cool we're going to be reviewing. It's going to be the Creality K1 Max 3D printer. And before we get started, I need to make sure this is known. This is not a professional review of the K1 Max. This is a, let's say, more of a hobbyist review. Someone who hasn't been in 3D printing or in the 3D printing space for super long. Full disclosure, I think I've been printing on my current 3D printer for maybe about a year and a half, 2 years. So this is more of a amateur's review of a K1 Max, and if it's good for you to get, as opposed to something more beginner friendly. So let's jump on into it. So when we're looking at it, just as a overall glance, the printer is awesome. Some quick points to it. The thing is massive compared to what I had originally. I had more of a starter printer that most people would get off the bat, just way bigger in terms of space that it takes up and what you can print on it. The print bed, I think itself, is pretty massive at 300 millimeters. Something to note with this, it's a much bigger printer than what I'm used to. The one I've got, it's a much more friendly, beginner-friendly one. A little smaller, and that's all I've ever needed for. So this was more of my, like, I'm getting into the hobby, kind of time to start making an upgrade. Maybe start making bigger stuff if it's something I want to look into in the future. And honestly, one of the biggest sell points for me is whenever I got this, it was actually on sale for a pretty decent sale on their website. So what are some of the things that are drawing points to it? So first off, it is actually a lot smarter than the other printer I've got. The K1 Max actually has a software built in that tells it if something is going wrong, so it'll stop your print or give you the option to resume it if you want to just kind of hope for the best and see how it goes. It can be a bit finicky sometimes, but with my experience, it's always been pretty spot on of seeing like, hey, something is wrong in what we are seeing with our little AI camera. One of the other more important things about this new printer, it actually has an auto leveling system in it, which, I don't know, maybe it's just me. I feel like the most troubling part of my printer before was the leveling. It took so long usually. I'm sure it's a user thing. I probably just suck at leveling it, but man, it feels really nice to just be able to sit there and say, all right, cool, let me hit a button, and then it'll figure itself out. And on top of that, the software is usually really reliable. I don't think I've had too many times where something came out and was a failed print. The only times it really has been more on my side because I set something up wrong, which, in total fairness, that's user error, right? So with the auto leveling, there's another thing they actually have in the printer is a little camera. So at first, whenever I looked at it, I thought it was super cool because you have a camera, you can just be able to pull it up in the app, look at it, make sure it's still printing. That way, if for whatever reason this auto detection software doesn't go off, you can stop it on your own. Another one of the key features on this printer, that thing is so fast. With their little test print, the Benchy that comes built onto the machine already pre-sliced and everything, I want to say it was probably twice as fast as if I was to use my old printer, which has been great. With that coupled with the bigger size of the bed has allowed me to do a lot of crazier prints. So one of the bigger ones I've wanted to do for a long time is actually build a helmet. And it's been crazy because the helmet's still in two pieces, right? Because you'd have a back detachable piece and a front one that just kind of clips together. I managed to print the entire front one in one shot and it only took 16 hours. As a comparison, I put it on the old printer just to see what it would be sliced up. And I want to say it was reading at about 48 hours if I was to do it that way. So, in my opinion, the K1 Max has been super efficient and actually quick whenever it's been sliced correctly. Cool feature that I found included on this as well, they actually have a really decent wireless setup. So, on my old printer, it was go over to the printer, grab the SD card, go to the computer, load whatever I need onto it, throw it back on the printer, and then hit print. Honestly, nothing wrong with that. And on the old printer, there are ways to get around that and upgrade it, but I just never did it. But for this one, and especially working through Orca Slicer, which is an awesome tool in itself comparatively, I'm able to just go in, have it linked straight to the K1 Max, and then import on the G-code and hit play. So it's really just a press and play kind of scenario, which I find to be crazy. It's a level of luxury I wasn't really used to be honest. Those are some of the good things about it, but naturally there are some things that probably aren't the best. So first off, and it's something I have seen with a lot of people, the app is absolute garbage. Like, there's no way to really put that otherwise. The whole thing, it feels like you're using the app for AliExpress. It's just like a glorified, hey, check out what models we have for sale that you could totally get for free online if you actually went to this website. I don't know. It feels scummy to me, and I'm not a fan of the app itself, but the only saving grace that the app has is that you can just check on your printer through the app and manage to pause prints, stop prints, and I think you can actually start them as well. Additionally, it has some uses because for some of these shots that you see in this video, it's taken straight from the app where it's recording what we have printed. So it actually will do a quick time lapse and summarize it and save it for you in a little library, which is awesome. It's great. It's fun to look at, especially if you're like me that like geeking out over making a giant print and seeing it done within a minute. But that's kind of where it ends. Whenever you look at the app, like, it's unbelievably slow sometimes just to pull up. And sometimes you have to go close the app, refresh it just to get the view back on your printer. Not to mention there's a couple times now I've had to go and actually get the printer reconnected to the app, which it's a pain, sure, but for me it's better than my previous setup still. Another downside to it, every printer is going to get jams, or you're going to get a stuck piece of filament that stops everything with a grinding halt. I had one of those, and I was looking it up. It's still something that happens with any printer because plastic, it's finicky, you know, filament. But when it comes down to it, that thing was a pain to fix. So much so that I couldn't deal with it with easy methods. I had to actually take apart the printer head just to do it. And let me tell you, doing that solo kinda sucks. I actually had to get help because just trying to ratchet like the nozzle off of it was such a pain. I luckily had someone that knows what they're doing, so a little less beginner friendly when you think about it. But again, this is a higher end machine, so it kind of makes sense that you should have some level of expertise going into it. I should also note, I was printing like a madman for the past 3 to 4 weeks of just constantly every day printing something, whether it be pieces of a bigger project or just one-off small things I would make for my friends and give it to them. And lastly, the last downside to it, and it's not really a downside depending on how you look at it, is that barrier to entry. I think the normal cost for this is close to around $1,000. That is a lot of money. I luckily was able to get it on sale because Creality was doing a massive sale on a bunch of their stuff, and got a pretty good deal with that, a couple of rolls of filament, and I think like a little nozzle kit for $700 or $750. That to me was worth it because the reliability, the speed of which you can do it, it really plays into it. But it's a tough sell for someone getting into it, which, you know, brings us to our last point. Who is this thing really for? If you were just getting into 3D printing, I wouldn't go for it. I would start small just in case you don't like actually doing it and you start learning some of the more intricate ways that the printers work, just so you have an understanding. And then once you've put in some time with it, know what you're doing and how to slice things up, then move to the K1 Max. I think a lower end printer usually costs you a good bit less, right? Like I think probably close to $200, $300. But jumping in immediately and spending $700 to $1,000 seems like a rough go at it, especially if you end up not liking it. So I would say only get the K1 Max as a future state if you like actually 3D printing as a hobby. And I could see this thing being used for a lot, right? If you are opening a business, like an Etsy business or selling online of making something you design and sell, this is perfect for it because it's reliable. You can print them out nonstop. Every now and then you'll get your hiccup, but by then hopefully you kind of figure out easier ways to deal with fixes and whatnot. But being able to reliably push out prints from your computer, not have to go and check on it constantly, have the app to be able to check it and everything, does go a long way when it comes down to investing in this product. Especially if you're going to be doing things like bigger props or cosplay stuff. This printer does crazy work for cosplay and prop stuff. So overall, what do I give the K1 Max? Despite all of the issues with the app, the fixing of the printer head and all that kind of stuff that I had to do, I still have to rate it pretty high. I mean, I've had it for a little over a month now, and I am still incredibly happy with it. The thing puts out work like no other, the quality is there, it's fast and reliable, and overall, like, it's just a good experience to use. I feel like this whole print and or press play and forget thing, it's a kind of crazy concept to me, and not to have to come back to it and see it, some stringy mess all over the print pad. So overall, I give it a 9 out of 10. The only things that would really make it better are, one, if it was a little easier to take apart, but again, I think it's a skill issue on my part. And honestly, the app is the only thing really holding it back. That app is really annoying. So, 9 out of 10. I think that's a pretty fair assessment. I will say, I think I give it a 9 out of 10 though, because I got it for a good sale price. If it was higher price, I had to pay that, I'd probably drop it to an 8. So, moral of the story, look for a sale if you can find it. But other than that, that's our review on the K1 Max. So if you have any suggestions on what I should be doing for 3D printing wise, leave them below. But otherwise, let us know down below on your comments and thoughts, and we'll see you next time. All right, peace.